Greetings, guten Tag, Talafalava. This is Dr. Snow Brown speaking to you all, especially my snow sheep, snow shepherds, snow can club congregation. That's great. So what have I got to preach about today, or this morning, being the 24th of November 2022? Well, for starters, the case of our so-called friend, Constable Stuart Bertram Blake, that I recently served a trespass notice to on the 9th of November 2022. Well, I later on discovered, that's right, that there was a mix-up, that there might have been a mix-up actually, that's correct. Constable Stuart Bertram Blake is not the same constable that I spoke to regarding a recent unlawful entry complaint that I lodged by the police, in which a Constable Blake, I got the cell phone number, that's great, that I refer to as Dr. Blakey, that's correct, Mr. Shadow, inside my CKCTV Facebook that I've been preaching about. So the constable, that's correct, that I presumed, that's good, was Stuart Blake, because of the fact that, well, he was always on Facebook, you see, that's correct. So when I said to myself, well, they've got the same last name, I'm assuming that that must be the constable, that's correct, that dealt with my complaint regarding here the unlawful entry here at my so-called address recently this year, in which he answered my complaint and advised me to install a camera inside my address. And of course, I thought, not this again, that's correct. I've already got one outside my door, and Kaingaora has two cameras just across from my door on the opposite side that is supposed to record any unlawful entries inside this address of 12 flats inside it. So I didn't see the point, what he needed to do. So the gentleman, the constable's name, or the police officer, real name that I discovered, thankfully, sometime this week, I went and obtained that information, or given by a very helpful staff there at the Wellington Watch House, Wellington Police Station, when I went to fill out two more requests for official information to resolve the case of the two police officers who are suspects regarding a historical rape crime, that's correct, during a lockup on the 24th of June 2003 that I have been preaching quite a bit inside my kingdom, Crystal Kingdom Church TV Limited, or Crystal Kingdom Church TV, by Dr. Snow Brown from Aotearoa, New Zealand, that you have all, been reading about. That's great, especially those that have always been part of my ministry. So the constable's name is Constable Jeffrey Blake, that's correct. And I discover he's a senior police officer, constable, he does work at the Wellington Police Station. He does crime scene sort of, forensic type work, that's correct. So he lives in Wellington, he's well known by, I would say, by the New Zealand Police, and in general by the community at large, and also by many, many people, citizens, and many people here in the Wellington region. And so Constable Stuart Blake is based here in Aotearoa Police Station. Now, I guess, oh my God, I know. I was like, how did that's great. What a mix-up, what a mix-up. So the constable that I was supposed to serve the trespass notice to was Constable Jeffrey, that's correct, Blake, who's based in the Wellington Police Station. And yet I took out, that's right, I took out but you see, I only, I only listen because I'm a natural pastor. I go by what, whatever comes to me, meaning the guardian angel is going to preach that way. I'm just going to go along with it through the Holy Spirit. If Archangel Warren says that it is, that's how it is. So I guess what I'm getting at, that this is for my snow sheep, snow shepherds. Whichever way my preaching comes, in whichever form, even if you think, oh my gosh, that couldn't possibly happen. That sounds like, it's crazy. It's weird. I know, it's crazy. He couldn't possibly, if it comes out the wrong way, and if it sounds wrong to you, take it that way. Take it as it comes. That's great. Just like the weather patterns. So that later on, in your own little minds, that's correct, whether you're in darkness, completely blind as a bat, or you got plenty of light there inside your so-called lamp on top of your head, don't worry, it will come right. It will come right in your own time, in your own brain. That's correct. So I've decided, hey, if I preach something and it doesn't have to be truthful, that's correct. Because I suddenly realized, I'm sorry, but that's how it is. That's what it means to be a natural pastor. Whichever way God gives you, that's right. It gives you the information for my snow sheep, snow shepherds to digest, according to their heart conditions and levels. That's how it is. So there is to be no judgment towards the natural pastor. Whatever comes, just take it, just digest, and let it just go through you, past you. That's great. And then eventually, and by some miracle, by some, sheer miracle, something miraculous, well, you're going to learn a lesson from it. That's great. So the lesson I learned was, excuse me, was trust always. Trust my Lord. Even if I think it doesn't sound right, and it sounds a bit crazy, trust my Lord because he knows what he's doing. And so, and even if it's not true, if the information is incorrect, Constable Stewart, Bertram, Blake couldn't possibly, the one that, that was there, that could have committed that heinous crime upon your person. I guess for the purpose of illustration, well, what would happen if, say, historically speaking, going right back in his days before he became a police officer, that he did commit a crime, but it wasn't this victim, that's correct, that it might have been somebody else, right then. So the information sounds now wrong, that's correct, in the sense that, well, didn't happen, he didn't do it to you, but still, he might have done it to somebody else, that's correct. So it still stands, that's correct. But then, I thought about it. So we went to the electoral rolls, that's great. And I had to, the check again. Why did the guardian angel preach in that manner towards Constable Stewart, Bertram Blake? And I suddenly realized it might be that he is actually an associate, after all, of this criminal organization, of this red one. He might be a KKMMB associate. That's correct. But there's no way of knowing that knowing that for certain. Well, I think it wasn't until he decided to retaliate by dictating, by applying arbitrary dictatorships or trying to discipline you for what you said about him, or let alone, posting the picture of his so-called address. But I mean, that's a form of protest, but that also is the right for victims to express the harm, to let it all out. Remember, the offender has been getting away. That's great. So somebody has to be punished, and the Archangel decided that it would be Constable Stewart Bertram Blake. That's correct. And the picture that the victim so-called used, well, it was obtained online. No, it's available, publicly. I did not hack into his obtaining information about him unlawfully. That's great. But I don't think I misused information as well either. It was justified. It was justified. That is the kind of things that would go through the heads of a lot of victims who later on in life remember what happened to them. And is saying, you know what, the offender, if he was going to get away with something like that for over 20 years, my God, those are the sorts of things that the victim has got a right to put things right. Not the kind of, forgiveness like slap on the hand and say, I forgive you. Right, that's the Christian standard way. On a nobles level or a Knights Templars level, it's different. So we don't have to, outwardly be violent towards a person, but we can certainly express our so-called, harms in this way. And we verbalize it. That's great. And we say it in words, but we say it inside our kingdom. That's great. At least we're not out there, right there, but we're saying it. That's great. And unfortunately, when you've got criminals and people, commoners coming in, when they read something like that, they're going to take it out of context. Naturally, if they've got a very harmful mindset and a spiteful mindset, they're going to take it out of context. And then the next thing that will happen is, like Constable Stuart Bertrand Blake thinks that he's got a right to discipline the victim, let alone punish the victim. But I mean, the victim of any sexual crime or sexual assault, sexual violation or rape, hey, they had already been punished. The victim had lived with that crime, which is a heinous crime, for 20 odd years. And yet the offenders, that's great, were able, to still live their life, enjoyed all their privileges, but they were still harming the victim through their associates, through their criminal associates. Well, what happened after the 24th of June 2003? Well, on the 26th, that's like 3 days later, on the 26th of June 2003, the victim ended up, getting medical attention. She had a strange, unexplained phenomena, which was a medical, suddenly she had some sort of, allergic attack or something. Pus came out of her ears. That's great. The whole face was swollen. It was like, oh my God, it was out of this world. Your throat was sore. You felt pain you were in pain and agony. It was like I'd been assaulted, like a car had crashed through my entire body. That's great. And I was having oh my God, it was painful. I do remember it, how painful it was. But but I was locked overnight, 24th of June, processed by 2 police officers on duty that after 4 p.m. on that day. Would have been the 3rd willful trespass breach of the university's trespass notice, but that was because I was deliberately doing it for a civil and political, protest. It's great. And the 3rd time was about enough. That was enough for me. It was enough to sink in my so-called, dumb head. That's great, because I was hitting the brick wall all the time. That the university is not going to back down, and they don't care about the so-called, that's right, your protest and blah, blah, blah. They're just going to arrest you every time you cross over the boundaries. So by the 3rd time, got it. I learned my lesson. That's great. But I mean, I never thought that the university would be that nasty and mean and actually arrest you. That's great. Although the first 2 arrests was the police, they let you through. They just let you go. That's great. So they should have done the same thing the 3rd time, but they decided to lock you overnight. That's correct. So the 2 police officers that were on duty that evening, that's great. I remember what they looked like, how they spoke, what their demeanor was. Man, they look like your typical Pākehā who were sleazy as anything. That's correct. They're up to no good. There was something dodgy about these two. That's correct. But of course, I didn't know anything. I really didn't care, because at the time, I was suffering from depression as well. I didn't know I had a mental illness at the time regarding, sexual assault, or, a first historical one going right back to 1996, by Mr. Prick or Atua Dr. Taviteli Bene. There at the university and off campus, that's correct. That caused me to become a client of ACC later on in 2005. So the 26th of June 2003, something wasn't right. And I put it down when I woke up the following morning after being locked overnight. This is the 25th of June 2003. I knew something had happened, something terrible and awful had happened the night before while I was asleep. My body just said, you know what, I don't feel comfortable, but it feels like they've done something. It felt like you've been invaded, or somehow they had done something terrible. And my body knew that something had happened. And probably the part that I felt drugged up, like I'd been, so much drug had been pumped into my body. And also something foreign had entered my body that shouldn't have entered. But probably the part that I knew something wasn't right was the lower part of my anatomy, which is my, private part, my private groin area. Didn't feel right. So I guess at that time, I just ignored it because I thought it's just probably one of those things, it's all in your mind, Anyway, I turned out of back court, but I was really not feeling too well. I did feel, really unwell and sick. Anyway, by the 26th of June 2003, something had definitely happened to the victim during the lockup because, well, I was in pain and agony all over, like I said. But the pus that came out of my ears, it was the most unnatural, and I knew it was induced by some sort of drug. And they knew exactly what to do to target that area of my body. So all the pain was coming through from the bottom, that's right, the top part of my head, right downwards. So in other words, I guess they didn't want me to remember what happened to me during the lockup in 24th of June 2003. So whatever they gave me, the two police officers, was for me to override any memories of what had happened so that I don't remember what happened. It's like a blackout. They wanted to give you a blackout or a blockout. That's correct. But what happened was that all the pain was focused on that area of my body, the upper top. That's correct. So it took away the pain, it took away the focus below down there, where I think, you were penetrated and violated. That's correct. There's no doubt about that, because I knew something had been done to me. But of course, that wasn't later to be, be discovered until now, at this age, 2022, and later on, a couple of years back. That's correct. I discovered. And so that's why I made the decision to request all my official information in the system, which I did, and I'm glad I did, because my medical file clearly shows that you are a victim of torture and cruelty, a victim of slavery, and you definitely now, reflecting back, were a victim that were targeted by this criminal organization, being the Upper Hutt Mongol Mob Association with its KKK associates, going back in 1996. In the last 26 years, this victim has been targeted by this organization. That is correct, because after that torture of the 26th of June 2003, that I know would have come from those two police officers that were on duty on the 24th of June 2003. So what I want to make it clear to you all, after I had, obtained more information in the electoral rolls, is that Constable Stuart Beecham Blake is not the officer. It's not the constable, not the officer that was there now. No, for sure. Next to the, the information that I obtained from the electoral rolls, he wasn't the one, because according to the information that I have discovered, is that he didn't become a police officer or a constable till about 2005. So that automatically rules him out being a suspect. Yeah, but he definitely is a lead. He definitely is a lead. Why? Well, if he's an associate of the KKK MMB, then that means he is already part of this organization, part of the arbitrary dictatorships or the harms or the targeting of the victim, and that would mean that he must know the two police officers that were on duty that day that the victim got out to. That's correct. So which means then he would know about what happened to you. Yeah, 24th of June 2003. And I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of the MMB KKK associates, that organization, do actually know about it. So now that's read, they are actually an accessory to a crime. That's correct. They're witnesses. They're actually witnesses. And they could be summoned to come to court to give their accounts as to what they heard and who from. That's correct. So that's why, official information in the electoral is so important, because you can track down people's addresses and their full names and summon them to court especially if it's to solve a serious historical rape crime, a heinous crime. That's correct. Especially ones that amount to slavery, criminal harmful protocols, criminal stalkings, where there are tortures, where the victims have been known to be harmed, like the 3 nosebleeds. That's the other thing. So after the torture on the 26th of June 2003, after that arrest, the lockup, then the next harm that followed after that was before the first nosebleed on the 26th of August 2003. So this is like, I don't know, about 64 days after the arrest on the 24th of June 2003, and that torture on the 26th of June 2003. The first nosebleed, the first severe nosebleed, and this is the first time this has ever happened. Again, it felt unnatural. I remember it. I remember what it felt like. Can you imagine sitting there? You don't know what's happening to you. All you know is that you've got this blood coming through your nose. That's correct. And your mouth as well. And you can barely breathe. Why? Because, well, it's like what do you call it? It's like you're having a period, but instead of having your menstrual cycle like normally down there where it's supposed to come from, it is coming out of your mouth and it's coming through your nose. And it went for over 6 hours that you ended up being, no doubt, I think we rang the emergency, we went to Stokes Valley, and it didn't stop there because we ended up calling the ambulance. That's correct. On that day, later on in the evening. And I think you were almost unconscious. That's correct. So it was the most weirdest first nosebleed ever, but it was so severe that I am so convinced now that it was because of the 2 police officers. They had done something. They had violated the victim. That's correct. And then they tortured her on the 26th of June 2003. But that wasn't the end of it. Then there came the first severe nosebleed that I'm talking about that happened on the 26th of August 2003. But before that, it was Stuart Bum of work and income. We turned around, and it was really petty because the video surveillance will clearly show that he didn't have a right to serve you a trespass notice that covered all 10 branches of the Winds branch in the Wellington region, dated the 18th of August, dated the 18th of August 2003, that was served via the Armour Guard staff on the either 27th That's right, 27th of August 2003. I mean, I got a shocker. That's great. When I got served that. And yet, what he should have done as a manager of the facility was that he should have given you 3 warnings, plus a written warning, before he made that decision. So in other words, this decision that came through Stuart Mum looks like also, now, so first torture, 26th of June 2004, it was overnight. Then 26th of June 2003, and now the 18th of August 2003 from Stuart Mum. That's correct. And that trespass notice, it not only, I think it covered 8 years, you got served another extra 2 on top of that. And it covered 8 years where you were controlled and restricted. You were treated like a criminal, like a common criminal. That's correct. And a slave at remote client unit. And Stuart Mum, I don't know who was behind Stuart Mum, but I believe also that the 2 police officers were behind the dictatorship. And I think that's when they took control of your privileges. It started from, I think it worsened from there. But before that happened to you on the 24th of June 2003, they set you up at the computer course with 2 of their members. Now, I've yet to get the address. We need to go back to the electoral roll because we need to summon that woman that did the computer course in 2001 with her partner. That's correct. That's right. Need to come to explain themselves at the court as to what did you do with the information. That's correct. They're at the computer course. Also, Aotearoa Dr. Tawitali Pina in terms of the connection, the first historical sexual assault connection back in 1996. I actually think that's another. He is the culprit, the main one that sparked all these other harmful atrocities or criminal harmful protocols. That's correct. Thereafter, the first one, 1996, 2001, the computers course, and then 2002 with the university law faculty, Matthew Palmer, the banning of you for 2 years that led to 6 years banning. That's correct. Those are decisions that all came from the organization. This is what I've discovered. Now, you've never been a member and never been an associate, but it looks like Aotearoa Dr. Tawitali Pina and the president of the organization, as well as the KKK and your rallies, had actually used you, taken advantage of you, and decided to use you for what they could get out of you. So if they wanted to study you and experimented you, but they wanted more so to convert you to some sort of slave. And in this case, it is believed that the victim, they wanted sex from the victim. They weren't satisfied, and looks like Aotearoa Dr. Tawitali Pina, back in 1996, he was married, but he lied to the victim. But I mean, it was obvious he was a sexual predator. And he set up the victim as well. They'd all set up the victim, actually. Your cousin side of the family had known about it, but it looks like they had always wanted to target you. Specifically, their members wanted to have sex with you. But they would have to go through somebody like Aotearoa Dr. Tawitali Pina, the 2 police officers, that's correct, 2003, that couple that are members now, that's been confirmed, of in the computer course in 2001, and even someone like Chief Justice Matthew Palmer, Professor Matthew Palmer, they had to go through their associates in order to harm the victim, control the victim, exploit the victim. That's correct. So then the second nosebleed then followed, which would have been about when? The 15th of November 2006 till about the 30th of November 2006. And so that was the second torture. Again, where did it come from? The 2 officers that violated the victim during a lockup 2003. That's correct. 24th June 2003. The second nosebleeds was even more severe than the first one. In fact, the second one was even worse because you ended up at the emergency department. That's correct. I remember it. And I swear to God, and I ended up having an IV. That's great. Overnight the next morning. But my chest felt like, I swear to God, there's no doubt. I was sitting there at the reception when we arrived there at the emergency. We called the ambulance to get me there. I would sit there for almost like more than 3 hours. And there was just nothing but thick blood. I was like, period, coming through my mouth and my nose non-stop. Can you imagine what that feels like? If you had to look, if the judge had to look at the video surveillance and see the victim sitting there, and she doesn't even know she's actually been subjected to a heinous crime of torture and cruelty. There is somebody watching. That's correct. It is the most disgusting thing I have ever experienced in my entire life. But thank God I didn't cry out loud to God. I didn't bawl my eyes out. That's correct. I was completely calm, and I was just going with emotions. But I didn't lose control. I didn't feel like dying, but it just felt so inconvenient. There was there was a lot of discomfort and distress. I wasn't stressing out. I just felt like, you know what, this is so unusual. I don't know why this is happening to me. But I'm just going to endure it. That's great. Just get through it. But I swear to God, I could have had a heart attack. I could have lost my life. I swear to God, I said, right about now, I'm going to die. Yeah, die. I don't know. I don't know why this is happening to me. But it is it's such an injustice. It is so disgusting and horrible to have somebody, pull a rug from under your feet. But to have that kind of control to abuse, that kind of power to abuse, I'm sorry, New Zealand. But your people deserve to be taught a lesson by the 1,000 Nazi soldiers. And the New Zealand police, they need to do something about those 2 police officers. They need to hand themselves in. That's correct. They need to be arrested. That organization needs to be disbanded and dissolved. They need to start using their own slaves for whatever they can get out of. Man, I don't want a criminal organization like the MMB or KKK that ever take advantage of this victim ever again for your rubbish and your garbages. That's correct. The victim didn't deserve that kind of treatment, New Zealand. I'm a noble. I'm not a garbage or rubbish to my family, but those police officers and that criminal organization and those evil son of a bitches and their criminal associates who are so selfish and arrogant, they only think about what they can get out of people and controlling people's life and, making people's life, giving misery, making their lives miserable and giving them misfortunes like that. Oh my God, you don't ever want to have that on your conscience, let alone at your deathbed. That's correct. Because you don't know whether you're going to survive the next day or why the hell is this happening to me? I'm not even a gangster. That's great, let alone a mobster. But somebody has just taken control of, has made it, has done something awful. And yet they're watching. That's the sinister thing. That's the worst thing about it, is that they're actually watching you. What? You're being tortured. The victim is actually being tortured. It's like a serial, killer, serial rapist kind of movies. That's right. But this isn't a movie. This is real. It was really happening there and then. The staff at the hospital can vouch for it and say, yeah, we actually saw her. The video surveillance clearly shows that she's being tortured. But by who? And why? That's correct. She doesn't deserve that, New Zealand. Jacinda Ardern wouldn't like to be tortured like that in front of her partner, let alone her family, immediate family, her loved ones, because, well, my parents wouldn't know what to do. Because the hospital are the only people that have the expertise to deal with issues like that. But look at me. I had to deal with something like that. This never happened to me in all my life, my medical history. 2002, before I came to study law faculty, my criminal record was clean as, that's correct, clean as a whistle. And I've never experienced any nosebleeds like that ever. until I went to university, until I preached a trespass notice, and until the police decided to lock me, teach me lessons. But that wasn't the end of it. And then came the third nosebleed. And when did that happen? Well, it happened here, right at this address, on the 11th of August 2013 until about the 16th of August 2013. Those are tortures. I mean, I rang the ambulance three times. And can you imagine turning out there 3 times? They're at the Lower Hutt Emergency Department. I mean, they cauterized your nose. They did about 3 different procedures. And it didn't stop. It didn't stop the bleeding. That's correct. We ended up having to be referred to the Wellington ear, nose specialist throat. That's correct. And he wasn't a Malaysian doctor. He was a Malaysian doctor. Right about on that day, there was like a 6-point-something earthquake. That's great. Now, I was there on the bloody, I'm about to do, the Malaysian doctor's about to carry out a procedure. Next thing you know, holy fuck, what is this? That's great. We're having an earthquake. Oh my God. And everybody, so quickly have to, But the so-called, I take my hat off, and I'm so grateful to that Malaysian doctor, because he was so wonderful. And he made the so-called distress and the discomfort of bleeding in the last 6 days. And on the 6th days, he's about to end it all, this torture. He said to me, you know what? I don't know what the Lower Hutt Emergency Department were doing, but they could have actually fixed this problem. They could have stopped this near ages. Like first day, second day, yeah. And all it was, he said, right, there is a nerve that I need to kill. That's correct. And he had a long needle that he had to kill the nerve. Somehow it has burst out. That's correct. And what it was probably because whatever drugs they gave you to raise your blood pressure, so it was so high, it went up to 196. My blood pressure has never gone to the top of the roof. So something wasn't right here at this address. And how did that happen? Well, these 3 nosebleed, again, from the same police officers. They are definitely KKK, MB associates, and they know Aotearoa Dr. Tavi Talipine. They would know Constable, Stuart Bertrand Blake. They would know Constable Jeffrey Blake. That's correct. They would know also Chief Justice Matthew Palmer. They would know Mr. Anthony Shaw, or Mr. Willow. In fact, they would know the majority of their criminal associates, like Deborah. That's correct. Oh, this is not sounding at all good news, does it? No, it doesn't. Sadly, it sounds like a horror movie. That's correct. More so that way. But the most awful thing is that you had to endure the discomfort, the distress, and all of the uncertainty, the feeling of inadequacy. I didn't lose my belief in God. And I certainly didn't quit on my Lord and my Jesus the whole time, even though it felt like, oh my God, not this again, another misfortune, another bad news. What is this? There seemed to be a bad luck or a bad omen following me around. That's correct. But I don't know why I'm being tortured. And I suddenly realized, maybe it's because, I don't know, whatever it is, I must have done something. But I know I didn't do anything wrong. And I suddenly realized it's because you had 2 criminal organizations. They suddenly thought it was their right to teach you lessons. Not only because of supposedly a speech that you made in 2002 at the Human Rights Tribunal, where you said a lot of things against the treaty partnership, treaty document, and the Maoris. But at the end, they've got to realize something. Now they've really done it. Now they really have done it. I'm sorry, but the victim is justified in saying that you can all go to hell and that you don't need to enter my kingdom. Any victim who endures such atrocities, one on top of another, where everybody is conspiring, some sort of mutiny, like silence, where they don't intervene, they don't report any of the crimes, they don't do anything to try and stop the harms from proceeding on, from continuing on. Oh my God, Aotearoa, New Zealand. What a waste, what a waste. What a terrible waste your country is. Your treaty partnership is so evil. That's exactly what it means. But to think that they are so uncivilized, barbaric savages is correct. To behave in the most, evil way where they conspired to not only target the victim, but torture the victim and teach her lessons that she didn't deserve. And even now, you think that now that we've got the third so-called tenancy manager, that you think that the torture would stop and the unlawful entries would stop? I'm afraid it is still happening. Every time I leave this address, they're still coming in. It's like they're completely ignorant. They don't even give a fuck. That's great. They don't care. They got no, my God. They have, I don't know what it is they're made of, but they must be the most devious, evil son of a bitches ever on the face of the earth. And I'm afraid that the people of Aotearoa, especially the Maoris in this country, who are in partnership with the racist white niggers, you fuck the shit out of, that you fuck whenever you want something done, or whenever you want your way, and whenever you want your wish and stuff to be granted or manifest in reality. You know what? You people are the most evil son of a bitches. The most evil race ever on the face of the earth, and even in the South Pacific. The Maoris, the people of Aotearoa, is by far the most evil. And it's no wonder every time I try to post something about New Zealand inside my kingdom, I could never really understand why it never lasted, and why it was always deleted. Why the guardian angel said, you know what, take it out, please. Take it out now. My Lord would say, remove it. And every time I removed it, taking it out, I felt good, I felt safe, and I felt at peace with my Lord. But every time I post something about New Zealand, it was like something was there that just didn't feel right. And I guess I feel like Snow White already. And maybe in this case, you really are Snow White in the form of Snow Brown. That's correct. Get it? Oh, Aotearoa, New Zealand, I feel so sorry for you right now. I don't feel pity for any of you, but I feel so sorry. That's great. Because from where I'm standing, this country has committed so many heinous treasons. And boy, are you going to pay for it severely. That's great. There is so much coming your way, and it ain't going to be my problem because I never told you to do what you did. That's correct. When I think about the fact that what this country is actually built on, it is built on sex addiction. It is built on lies. It is built on, trickery, despicableness, anarchy, deviousness, spitefulness. It is built on also on the death penalty. That's correct. People have been losing their lives over the years, and I couldn't understand why. And it's because you got so many criminal organizations, and you're applying all these criminal harmful protocols in the system, as well as arbitrary dictatorships that creates so much misery and so much extra burden baggages for people like myself. And I'm a noble, and other Christians and other good people. That's great. And yet your people and the rest of you are having a jolly good time all the time, getting up to mischief, getting up to no good, pulling pranks. I mean, some of them really risky, taking risks, gambling on people's blood and sweat, and even gambling on their reputations and damaging their reputations as well. My God, using them as well for what they could get out, for their advancement and their so-called empowerment. But at the end of the day, Aotearoa New Zealand, if you should commit a crime that is so heinous, there is no forgiveness from the gods. The gods are saying, thou shalt be, that's right, curse you. That's correct. You can understand now why that is justified, the guardian angel Samalam, to say that the gods have said, yeah, burn down all their maraeas. Abolish their treaty partnership. Don't ever give them any attention. Don't ever respect them. And don't ever stick your nose against their noses. Don't ever. They are despicable. They are disgusting. They are selfish, arrogant son of a bitches. And they deserve the 1,000 Nazi soldiers. In fact, I'm going to say this as the victim, not only for my heinous, my atrocities and everything else. As a victim, I'll speak on behalf of all the victims of tortures and cruelties, the victims of slavery, the victims of arbitrary dictatorships in the last 40-odd years, and the victims of sex crimes and rape. The only thing that matters the most to the people of this country, Aotearoa New Zealand, is the Aotearoa New Zealand on my original CKC TV Facebook or Crystal Kingdom Church TV logo. That's about the only thing that matters the most, that has more value, significance, and is symbolic, and it's what the people are crazy about in this country. If that's the case, then I couldn't get anything else, whether it be 100. I couldn't get anything as 100, not even 500, not even 1,000. That's great. Not one single donation. You know why? Because my waka doesn't exist, but my waka is too big for your donations. And my waka is too big for your country, because your country, yeah, you got so many waka, iwi, hapus and that. But my waka is a kingdom, and your nation is not a kingdom. That's correct. And for that, I'm too big for you all. You couldn't fit in. You couldn't fill my shoes. You couldn't even wear my crown. You couldn't wear my cloak. That you are unworthy. And I despise you all, my Lord, despise you all, especially my beloved Her Majesty Queen Snow Brown. My snow sheep, snow shepherds do not need to be among any of you, and they do not need to give their attention, let alone any such thing as pity, let alone such thing as aroha. You don't have any. The only aroha you have is the one where you're going to trade your so-called asshole, butthole, your pussy prick, for what the white man can give you. So, the only blessing I'm going to leave behind you when I leave your country for good, Aotearoa New Zealand, I'm going to hand you back your Aotearoa New Zealand from Aotearoa New Zealand that's on the original logo of my kingdom. You can have that back. I'll give you that as the only blessing. You don't need a blessing from me. I don't need any blessings from you. That's correct. But remember this. You can have your from Aotearoa New Zealand. You can have your Aotearoa back. Your New Zealand back. That's correct. But as for the Crystal Kingdom Church TV, by Dr. Snow Brown, that's mine to take. That's all mine. But you can have back your Aotearoa New Zealand. But I'll now accept my 1,000 Nazi soldiers from somewhere else in another country. But I don't want anything from you. That's correct. Victims like me, and I'm no longer a victim. I'm speaking on a level of a noble. That's correct. Don't shed tears, because the only type of tears that you're going to shed is crocodile tears. Well, when you do shed your tears, drink it up, soak it up, drink it. That's correct. Drink what you deserve. Drink it, just how I had to endure those nosebleeds. The tortures, the cruelties, the atrocities, drink it. But you can have your Aotearoa New Zealand back and all your rubbish that you gave me back. My immediate family are far more noble, and they do not deserve to be taught lessons by a bunch of ratbags. This nation is a ratbag nation. And our Lord did not need to come down. If he came down to do the will of his Father, he didn't come down for Aotearoa New Zealand. He came down for his sheep, for those that needed to be rescued, that's correct, who deserved his salvation, and the gifts, that's correct, and the blessings, because they're grateful and they know how to say thank you, but they also know to say, I'm sorry, I'm taking responsibility, which is something that your people will never do, because that's how arrogant you are. To think that it's over 70 criminal organizations in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the white man in this country, allows the people of Aotearoa to exercise their type of the most harmful sovereignty. So to make up for their stolen sovereignty and for the loss of their lands and for the loss of their bullshit nonsense, they got to exercise their so-called arrogant bullshit arbitrary dictatorship, criminal harmful protocols through over 70 criminal organizations. That's to teach people a lesson on behalf of the racist white nigger, white trash in this country that are even worse than the South African and worse than the apartheid. That's correct. And here we were thinking that we came to the country. We came to the right country? No, at least we know that we didn't come under the status of refugees, let alone the status of slavery. That's correct. And we certainly didn't come with rubbishes either. We brought blessings, except they stole our blessing, just like they stole a lot of stuff. That's correct. And exploited and took advantage of nobles. But they couldn't do that to their own. That's correct. But you can drink. That's great. Let them drink their tears, their crocodile tears. Because I certainly don't need to cry anymore. I've been crying all these years. That's great. But I'm looking forward to filing a restraining order and leaving your country. And I'm asking for asylum. That's correct. But as for the rest of you, 1,000 Nazi soldiers is just what the doctor ordered, and it's just the medicine that this country needs, especially for those two organizations and the rest of the ratbags. The government of New Zealand is guilty of treasons, heinous treasons against my meek monarch. That's correct. And especially using two criminal organizations to control you like a slave and try to convert you like a slave. You could never be a slave. That's correct. No matter how many times they try to dig your grave, now all I see is they are going to rest in peace. But it won't be peace where there is a white flag flying. It will be a peace where there is a red flag flying with so-called blotches of blackness. That's correct. Oh, whoa, I know. Woe the day, Aotearoa New Zealand. Oh dear. Such a sad legacy. The land of the long white cloud. Yeah. More like the land of the long white tickle. Tails! That's correct. So let me wrap up and say this for the last time. To you, New Zealand, or Aotearoa New Zealand, now that you are happy to get your Aotearoa New Zealand back. Now, you probably already got a kingdom of your own now. Got a cardinal, Archie Lee, John Chu can create you one, let alone give you one. Compliments of the Catholic faith, Catholic Church. And also compliment of Satan, the devil. That's correct. Now you can create your own church TV. Except it'll be a Māori TV, not a CKC TV, Māori CKC TV Facebook. You could, and then of course you now can put Aotearoa New Zealand on it. Because effectively my logo will change when I leave your country. But this will be the last thing that I want to add to this so-called preaching. That is, I am now going to, I, Dr. Snowbound, hereby make a special plea to the United Nations. That's great. That is based in New York and the United States of America. Or let's say to all the so-called, the general, I think it's, is it Jensen Stoltenberg? That's correct. That New Zealand should be removed off your list of that's right, of your list of being a member of the NATO. Why? Because, well, the countless so-called, all the tortures and cruelties that I have just outlined, just a brief general overview, that lasting, say, in the last 26 years or 20 years, they all violate. They not only have committed treasons against a meek sovereign head, Dr. Snowbound, Queen Snowbound, but they have also violated their international obligation under the Crime of Torture Act. That's correct. They didn't bother to protect their treaty partnership, and the people of Aotearoa's rights under the treaty document and stuff were prevalent and more important than this meek noble here. That brought them somehow some global recognition because of that Aotearoa New Zealand on her logo. That's correct. That was more important to these people than anything else. That's correct. If you say that the donation, that you were more important, no, Dr. Snowbound wasn't more important. Aotearoa New Zealand on the logo was more important and above all and above anything else about this country. So what am I now imposing? What am I saying? That United Nations, I plead to all the countries that are part of the NATO and the United Nations, especially the allies, to, that's correct, in tribute of my honor, to impose sanctions against the government of New Zealand, to stop all cruelties and tortures, inhumane ill treatment, that's correct, of Dr. Snowbound in this country that is still going on even as I speak. Because the criminals inside this address are still coming in and are still torturing you, and they don't give a damn. That's correct. But the government of New Zealand is the one that is dictating and also giving them the okay to do that kind of thing. And I'm not having it, New Zealand, Aotearoa New Zealand. You can have it all back, have your Aotearoa New Zealand back, but I am leaving your country. But I want all the NATO nations and the allies of whichever country where there are nobles, and I'll mention a few of those nobles, His Royal Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed Al Maktoum, who referred to as Prince Faza of Dubai, followed by his beloved father, the crowned king of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Askari. And the next noble, because I am part of the nobles arrangement, is His Royal Highness King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla. These are some of the nobles that have been part of my ministry, part of my kingdom, in the last, couple of years. The next noble is King Harold V, Norway, and Queen Sonja of Norway. The next noble I wish to mention is Crown Prince Haakon of Norway and Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway, that have always been part of my kingdom. And of course, their two lovely children, Princess Ingrid Alexandra of Norway and Prince Sverre Magnus of Norway. The next nobles are Crown Prince of Morocco, Moulay Hassan, and his beloved father, Crown King Mohammed VI of Morocco. these are only, and of course, there are many, many other nobles in terms of all the kings and queens around this globe. I, Dr. Snow Brownlow, take the opportunity in tribute of myself, my atrocities, and the heinous crimes and treasons that I've been subjected to in this country by the government of New Zealand, to please impose sanctions to the government of New Zealand. Just like what you all did to so-called Russia, to impose so many sanctions to try and stop the war between Russia and Ukraine. Now I'm saying, I'm sorry, but I am now at war with the government of New Zealand, the New Zealand police of New Zealand, because they were the ones that appears to have dictated to my privileges, hijacked, my life, invaded my privacy. So the government of New Zealand, the New Zealand police, the Apartheid Mongol Mob Association, the Ku Klux Klan, they seems to be, and there's probably more, and their associates in my rallies, that have all been conspiring together as a whole group, very powerful group, all right? They gang up against this meek, single noble, that's correct. Not only to teach you lessons, but to torture you. But the kind of tortures that I've been subjected to is just ridiculous in a free and democratic society. Let alone in such a nation that we supposedly have such pride and joy that it's safe, that's correct, that it's secure, that we can achieve anything we want to achieve in this country, in the South Pacific. Well, I mean, they won the impossible, which is they have won the so-called America's Cup. World Rugby seems to be well known, that's correct. But probably the one thing that stood out from my ministry was criminal organizations, that's correct. And the sad thing is, well, I've never been a member or an associate. I have only been a victim. Probably the idea, if I had to say an illustration of some sort, or let's say metaphoric, I imagine myself just like how I protested there at the War Memorial in Wellington, where I'm standing there like the Statue of Liberty in New York in America. And I'm standing there minding my own business. And all around me are members of the government of New Zealand. Are the members of the New Zealand Royal Police, the New Zealand Police Force, that's correct. And then the other, which is my rallies and their so-called bad connections, being the KKK MNB and their associates. And then all the other officials that apply their so-called criminal harmful protocols on behalf of those organizations. So the victim is just standing there, minding her own business. And then, of course, you've got Aotearoa Dr. Tavi Teleopine, where it started back in 1996, where all these harms and these things came from, these evils came from. And what are they doing? Well, it seems like they're all around you. And the moment they see you, they behave in such a manner, just like with the criminals inside this building, where they're applying their criminal harmful protocols, and you're just standing there. And when they do, they either get some sort of treat, reward, recognition, or some special privilege. And it's like, I don't know, they're using you for what they can get out of you. And yet the rest of them are all commoners. And you're a noble. And all they're doing is just taking advantage of you while you stand there, minding your own business. I guess what I'm saying, Aotearoa New Zealand, is, and the citizens of this country, that's how pathetic, that's how petty this country is. When I have to compare all those atrocities, and a lot of those things are actually crimes, heinous crimes, and then I have to put it next to the one willful trespass charge that I'm having to deal with at the Hutt Valley District Court, I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, those atrocities, I know, and these heinous crimes, and all these treasons, and all this nonsense that the government of New Zealand has been allowing to happen, man, next to a one willful trespass charge, where the victim actually went to, was so civil and so considerate, she taped the trespass notice on the door. And the person, she didn't break down the door and enter, like what they've been doing inside this address here. They've been coming in when at their liberty, entering, invading the victim's so-called private spaces, digital devices, hacking in, committing all sorts of criminal, breaching of privacy. There's no protection. There's no respect. There's no boundaries. And yet you got to enter some white shit, some racist bitch of a whore, this correct bullshit, white trash, white nigger address to tape an entry. The way you approached, tape a stupid trespass notice on her door at the entrance and leave the address, without doing anything else beyond that point, not invading her privacy, not even stealing anything. And she has the nerve, a commoner, a white trash, to turn around and misuse that information. That's correct. To damage, to destroy, try to destroy my reputation. Let alone discredit my so-called good name. My family's honorable. What a disgrace and a dishonor. That is to the New Zealand government and the rest of your people, the rest of you here in this country. This country is so uncivilized, barbaric, and are built on savages who have no respect. That's correct. And pettiness in comparison to all those crimes. Man, the victim, all I'm asking is the information that I need in order to convict and prosecute those two officers, and also to disband the organizations that have been targeting you. And it's like, the victim has had to endure 20 odd years of that. And you want to say that the one willful trespass charge that I'm dealing with, that I'm supposed to take it seriously. That's correct. Is that serious? Is that how petty and racist this country has become? But is that how stupid, the kind of stupidity and ludicrousy that this country is founded on? Oh my God. You know what? I am glad that I'm handing you back, Aotearoa New Zealand. That's correct. That blessing of yours that I don't need. My Lord, my God, taught me all these last 40 odd years. There is nothing that you ever taught me that's great, let alone give me. There was nothing good that came my way. I did my very best, not only as a citizen, to do good. That's great. But all you did was sow badness and evil. That's correct. And trying to dig my grave and steal from me, the noble. Well, I shall part happily. You have a blessed morning. But may you what? May you reign long. God save you all. From yourselves and from your cock and bull bullshit stories, tall tales and whatnot. In Jesus' name I declare it, amen. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.